oh my God, she knows. How does she already know? How could she possibly already know? How was Elizabeth able to move that fast? But wait a minute, she doesn't sound angry. What is going on? Story motherfucking time. So some time ago, I started a series titled Shadow of a Doubt. This, my friends, is part 4. So if you haven't already, please go and watch part 1, 2, and 3. I am going to do a recap of only part 3, but you do need to watch all the parts for everything to make sense. Does that make sense? Anyways, let us begin. So a really quick recap, at the end of part 3, Bella, the main character, discovered that she was in fact pregnant. However, at that same time is when Michael discovered that the woman with which he was having an affair was also pregnant. Now, keep in mind, as we progress into the next part of this story, Michael is now unaware that his wife, Bella, is pregnant. And Bella is unaware that Michael's mistress is pregnant. However, Bella is aware that Michael had an affair. Michael is also aware that Bella is aware of his transgressions. Okay, so upon Michael discovering that his mistress is pregnant, he panicked. Because even with him having had this affair, he still wants to be with his wife. So he panicked and disappeared while Bella was in the bathroom discovering her pregnancy. And she had already made up her mind not to tell him. She made up her mind to just leave because she's devastated. She's heartbroken. She's hurt. She leaves the bathroom, again, with no intent on speaking to Michael, but she's still surprised that he's not there. Prior to that, he was outside of the bathroom door begging for her forgiveness and for her to please hear him out. But she's unaware of the purpose of his panic and disappearance. She's still upset, she's still devastated, shocked that her husband has disappeared and isn't still groveling for her forgiveness. But still, she goes upstairs, sort of whatlessly throws a bunch of stuff on the dresser and her clothes in a bag randomly, and she just decides, I'm gonna go to my parents' house.
I don't want to tell my friends. I don't want my friends in my business. I don't really even want my parents in my business, but I feel better going to my parents.
So that's what she does. Randomly packs a bag with random things and goes to her parents' house in complete devastation. She gets there, of course her parents are welcoming. We have Mr. and Mrs. Delaney. Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, I know y'all have pointed out how poorly I do with naming people and how well I do with recycling names. Listen, I just need y'all to know who I'm talking about, okay? Mr. and Mrs. Delaney is Bella's parents, okay? Are Bella's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Delaney are Bella's parents, okay? So she gets there, her mother welcomes her open arms. Her father doesn't ask a series of questions. However, he's not stupid, okay? He put 2 and 2 together already and he already decided, I'm not asking any questions. Her mom is gonna ask questions because that's what mothers do, okay? That's what they do. They do. And so while Mr. Delaney is secretly planning to end Michael's life, Mrs. Delaney is trying to be a mother and simply says,
do you want to talk about it? Is there anything you want to tell me? You know, can you open up to me?
And of course, when you're heartbroken, even as a grown woman, you sort of revert back to that like sort of adolescent mindset. I don't want to talk. Everybody leave me alone. But that's not what she said, obviously, but that's her mindset. So instead she says,
I'm not really ready to talk about it now.
Her mother doesn't pry. Bella goes up to her old childhood room. I don't know why my words are deciding to do things against my will. Bella excludes herself. She isolates herself in her room. And Mrs. Delaney goes into the kitchen and tries to prepare them some tea for the evening, you know? And so while Bella, is in her room, she just sort of, all of her movements are kind of just loose, sort of resemblant of someone that has just given up. But we also have to remember, Bella has dealt, a lot of emotional information has been dumped on her. So at this point, she is feeling kind of hopeless. You know, and her movements depict that. And so she just loosely dumps everything out of her bag on her little twin-size bed that's pushed up against the wall, because even though it's still her room and she has a place to stay, her parents did turn it into a nice little office space. So it no longer looks like a bedroom. So it doesn't take long for the room to begin to look a little messy, with her sort of scattering her things all over the place, not really thinking about what she's doing. And I'm sure, you know, we've all been there, where we've gotten news that devastates us enough for us to not really be thinking about our movements. We're lost in our own heads. We are not in the present. We are somewhere up here, and we are lost. And so her mother comes upstairs with the tea in hand, without the intent to pry, just as a peace offering and just to say,
I'm here if you need me.
Except as she goes to hand Bella the cup of tea, she sees the picture of Elizabeth and Isabella on the floor, likely ending up there with Bella's loose movements and her just sort of carelessly dumping her stuff out of her bag. And prior to her getting there, carelessly dumping a bunch of random stuff in the bag. So Mrs. Delaney picks up the picture and she looks at it, squints her eyes, and recognition sets in, and she's like,
Bella, where did you get this picture from?
Bella turns around and she sees the picture and she just looks defeated all over again, because that's the picture that started this whole clusterfuck of a situation in the first place. Even with the defeated look, she still isn't planning on telling her mother everything. And so she comes up with a lie at the tip of her tongue. The first thing that comes to mind is,
in the middle of the move, we just, you know, some pictures popped up and we just sort of dumped it in the bag with everything else. I don't know. I don't remember really.
Terrible lie. So her mom said,
well, it's really weird that this would even ever end up at your place, because we've never talked about this woman before. This is your aunt and your cousin.
I don't know if y'all heard me. So the picture of the ghost, whose name is Isabella, and the ghost's daughter, whose name is Elizabeth, those pictures are pictures of two women that Bella is related to. You know what that means? That Elizabeth is Bella's cousin. Are y'all understanding what I'm saying? That means that Michael has impregnated both Bella and Bella's cousin. Now, everybody isn't aware of this. It's just you and I that's aware of this, all right? All Bella knows is that she's pregnant, and Michael knows that Elizabeth is pregnant. But the two of them aren't necessarily aware of what's going on with one another. You know, like information hasn't crossed that information barrier yet. I don't know if I confused you guys. That being said, Bella finally kind of just let loose. She just said everything. All the information just poured out, because emotions just started pouring out, and that she had had enough. She couldn't hold it in anymore. This was just another lump sum, another 2-ton weighing piece of information that was just dropped on her. And so finally she just pours everything out, and she tells her mother what happened. Everything, including the ghost part, including the entity part. Yeah. And so the two of them end up being in tears, because all Mrs. Delaney is thinking is that she didn't get a chance to make amends with her sister. Now here's the history. Isabella is the love child of Mrs. Delaney's father's affair. So Isabella, Bella's aunt, is Mrs. Delaney's half-sister, because Mrs. Delaney's father stepped out on Mrs. Delaney's mother, and the product was Isabella. And so with acknowledging that Isabella is deceased, also came with acknowledging that they never accepted her as a part of their family because they were so devastated and hurt at what their father did to their mother. And now she feels like she can't even make amends. So that's why the two of them are in tears. And so then eventually Bella says,
maybe you can still have your closure. Maybe you can still make amends because I've been communicating with her.
And Mrs. Delaney, even in the midst of her devastation, still hasn't came to terms with the whole communication with an entity thing. Okay? And so now she doesn't really address that topic as much as she wants to address the fact that her daughter's husband is having an affair with her niece, Bella's cousin. So now Mrs. Delaney finally says,
you're pregnant. I feel like with everything that's going on, you need to make this pregnancy a priority if you plan on keeping it.
And so Bella also acknowledges that as a priority as well and says,
yes, I do plan on keeping it. I do want this child. And even with everything that's going on, I want Michael. I still want him. And that's part of the hurt. That's part of the devastation. That's part of the sadness. I'm sad because I would never do anything like this to him. And I obviously love him and I want this to be a happy time. But instead, I'm crying in my childhood bedroom with my mom about the fact that he had an affair and he still hasn't even called me.
So her mother brings her back and she says,
okay, let's focus. Michael is going to call you. Michael is probably dealing with the fact that you might be leaving him. He is also devastated. I'm not saying that this is an excuse. I'm not saying that you should lighten up. I'm not saying that you should feel sorry for him. But this just brings us back to the fact that the pregnancy needs to be your priority. I think that we need to look into making an appointment. You know, an OB appointment, an obstetrician appointment, OBGYN. I think that we need to start taking better care of you. It's not just you anymore. It's you and the baby. I think that you are going to get the answer for what it is that's going to be best for you and Michael, and for you, Michael, and the baby. But for now, my best advice is to prioritize the pregnancy.
and of course Bella says, okay. And you know, that's what moms do. They speak some sense into you. They sprinkle some wisdom, some knowledge in the mix. In the mix of a heated, emotional moment, they say, now wait a minute, I've been on this earth long enough to know what we need to focus on, and that's the baby. Now, Mrs. Delaney is saying all of this because no one in this particular situation, in this scene, is aware that Michael has impregnated Elizabeth, their family member. And as much as Mrs. Delaney would like to be in shock and devastated with Bella, she wants to be the support system. She wants to be there. She wants to be the shoulder for her child. Now, the night progresses. They go to bed. You know, the two of them are still devastated. The two of them are still trying to accept and soak in and acknowledge and swallow all of the information that they've just received from one another. And of course, Bella's still thinking, where is Michael? Why haven't I heard from him? I mean, she's human. She's sad, but she also wants the man that she loves to fight for this. It's human. So, let us do a really quick rewind to Michael when he found out that Elizabeth was pregnant. He panicked and fled the scene. He disappeared because, again, he doesn't want to be with Elizabeth. He wants to be with his wife, and he has already long acknowledged that that affair was a mistake. It was a moment of weakness. Moments of weaknesses. Okay? So, we're rewinding and we're going back to when Michael left. he left their home. He disappeared because he was panicked, and he was thinking immediately, this is it. I've officially lost my wife. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And he's just driving and thinking and driving and thinking, and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So eventually he reaches out to Elizabeth and he asks if the two of them can meet up. They meet up at a coffee shop that's slightly outside of town, like just on the outskirts of town. And he just tells her. He doesn't just say, I don't want this kid, but he says, listen, I understand that I'm just as responsible for you getting pregnant. You know, the two of us made a decision. You knew that I was having an affair, so it's no surprise, it should be no surprise for you to hear that I don't plan on leaving my wife. That being said, I'm not the happiest to find out that you're pregnant. She was devastated. And the devastation quickly turned into anger. And so the anger turned into spite very quickly. And she immediately started to dish out threats that she's going to tell Bella that she's pregnant, that she's going to do her best to let Bella know how little of a man he is and how much he has now ruined her life because she's not getting rid of the baby and now she's stuck with the baby that he doesn't want. It turned into a huge argument in the middle of this coffee shop on the outskirts of town, and she storms out of there promising to ruin Michael's life. And so now Michael sits in this coffee shop not knowing what to do next, not knowing where his wife is, not knowing who to call, not really feeling like he has much of a support system because he also knows that he is completely 110% dead wrong. And then his phone vibrates. His phone lights up and it's his wife. And the guilt sets in. And of course he answers. And as soon as he answers, she says, "Where are you?" In the heat of everything, his wife, being as devastated as she is worried about him. And he says, I just tried to end things with Elizabeth. And she lets out a short, humorless laugh. And she's like, well, I've got news for you. Turns out she's a little bit more a part of our lives than I'd like to admit. And so now Michael is thinking, oh my God, she knows. How does she already know? How could she possibly already know? How was Elizabeth able to move that fast? But wait a minute, she doesn't sound angry. What is going on? And so then finally Bella says, apparently Elizabeth is my cousin. And that ghost that's been hanging out with us at our new home is my aunt, my mom's half-sister. Michael, not even really sure what to do with that information, immediately says, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be shitting me. My mom and I had a talk, and she made a good point. I want to keep this baby. So Michael's like, wait, what? Baby? You're pregnant? And Michael was able to acknowledge in the heat of everything how he still managed to be happy about the fact that his wife was pregnant. In the heat of his devastation that his side chick is pregnant. And so now, this gusto, this energy to fight for this family that he thought he was going to lose has returned. The panic is disappearing, and now the urge to fix things has replaced it. So now he feels like he needs to go find Elizabeth. And so he says to Bella, you're at your mom's right now? Are you at your mom's? Can I come there? Can we talk? Can we figure this out, please? And she sighs and she says, yeah, I guess so, because, I want this baby. I want to keep the baby. And I don't know, Michael, I'm
I don't know what to do about us, but I want this baby.
Okay. In his mind, he's like, I'll take that. I'll meet you at your mom's. He gets off the phone. He has no idea what he's gonna do about Elizabeth. He runs to his house to grab some things. They're home. And then there's Isabella. This is the first time he's seen this woman. And he's shocked. He's shook. He's like, wait a minute, how did you get in here? And then he pauses and he's like, oh my God, you're it. You're the thing, the ghost, the spirit. Why can't I see you? What's happening? And so Isabella, the ghost, is just standing there. She doesn't say anything for a second. Michael's heart is pumping out of his chest because, again, this is the first time that he's able to see her. And she finally says,
you and your wife are not safe here. My daughter is setting out to do a decent amount of damage. A solid amount of damage. Your decisions have caused a lot of havoc that is about to be wreaked on your home, on your future.
well, what am I supposed to do? What do we do now? Where do we go from here?
I'm afraid you might have to find a way to remove my daughter from the picture permanently.
And now Michael's just standing there with the things in his hands. And he's trying to put two and two together, and he's like, there's no way she could be telling me to kill this woman. And then Isabella finally says,
if you don't find a way to get rid of her, she will find a way to get rid of your wife.
So that's where I'm gonna have to end this story. I promise I got a good one coming for y'all. And you should get excited. In the meantime, click that link in the caption here down below. Make sure you subscribe, turn on the notifications button, tell your friends, share this video, tell your friends to catch up. We're gonna do our darndest to turn this into a little bit more of a production thing. Yeah, I'm really excited. Check out my editor, Blake Quake Beats. I've got some really fun stuff coming for y'all. Check out my merch. Thanks. Thank you. We are teetering on 60,000 subscribers and I'm so happy. So thank you.